set up? Or
No, I think I'm all right. I'm just going to show him how to do the mandala offerings in a more condensed way, because if I did the full way, it would take 2 hours. So
Right.
I'll go over everything. Yep.
I'll take about, I think, half an hour, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. Nothing.
Perfect.
Excellent. So let's bring everyone in.
Okay.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. How are you doing?
Hi.
Great.
Hey, yeah. Fabricio, give me 1 second. I'm just finishing. There's some people still joining in. Hello, everyone. Hello, how are you doing? Perfect. So, okay, we're just on the hour. So let's keep everyone 2 minutes. Sorry, what?
Hi.
Hey, how are you? So let's give everyone just 1 more minute to see if anyone else will join, so we don't have to interrupt things. Meanwhile, how are you guys doing? Is everything all right? Is the quarantine treating you nicely?
All good.
Not. Oh, that's absolutely great. Not easy. Not an easy thing for us. Of course, that also depends where you are. Where I am in Argentina, the quarantine here is pretty strict. Has been for a couple of months, but nowhere in the world it's easy now, I think. So I think everyone's connected. Just Miguel is not connected. Let me see if I can help him. Miguel, remember everyone we have a chat. Oh, just connected. Excellent. So having said that, welcome everyone to our two-parter. Today is a two-parter. First part is with us the workshop on visualization will take about half an hour, and then Lama Sherab will teach us a little bit on how to do the. Say hi, mate.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
He will go, for those who have completed the mantra marathon, doing the 4 mandalas of Tara. So we'll have like 2 blocks. And let's start, if you like, via the first block, the one on visualization. So I'm going to tell you a story, and then I'm going to try to.
It's a two-part thing.
Sorry?
The first is a workshop on visualization.
Right. The first is a workshop in visualization.
Okay.
And the second part is the restricted part, is the 4 mandalas of Taras.
Thank you.
More than welcome. So I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm going to show you a couple of techniques for visualization. But before anything, one thing that I want to know is if this will help. So we need to have a benchmark. What I will do, not saying anything, just I'm going to show you a picture for a couple of seconds, and then I want you to keep it in your mind as long as possible. When it starts to get blurry, when you lose it, essentially, when you lose the focus, then you let me know, either waving to the hand or unmuting yourself or chatting through the chat, and we'll see how long it takes us to do it before when we start and after the techniques that we're going to do, if this improves anything. Because I'm ambitious like that. I want you to have improvement within the workshop and within half an hour or 40 minutes. That's the main idea. Are you sure? Are you ready for the challenge? Excellent. So everyone, I'm going to mute yourself. Of course, you can always unmute yourself. And I'm going to show you this image. And I want you to look at it for a couple of seconds. Okay. To try to memorize it and to think about it as much as you can. And now, keep it in your mind, visualization. Now, Whenever you, okay? This happens to everyone, Nadine. Great. I see you, Fabrizio. Okay, perfect. So in average, let's stop here. Everyone start losing some detail. In average, let's say we can hold it 30 seconds, which I must say, it's a great time. There are some people who cannot hold it. There are people who come and say, I cannot visualize. That's the first thing. And there are people who say, I cannot hold it more than 5 seconds in a row. So 30 seconds, guys, it's a great baseline to start with. So let's talk a little bit about visualization. And to do that, I want to tell you a little bit of my work. So, well, oh no, just let it go. Just let it go, Alexander. It's basically an average for the group. That's the main thing. So even though I seem like, of course, a wrong way model, this is sadly enough, I haven't been discovered in my life, and I need to make my living otherwise. And with the Llama Sherpa, we also don't want to live as llamas, right? Because we have experienced some unpleasantness around the Dharma when essentially you make your living as a llama. So we both work in two things. Myself, I work at IBM, the computer software company. Part of it as an executive, and part of it as the global lead researcher for mindfulness within IBM. So I basically research meditation for a living. That's basically what I'm getting paid off. Well, that and being executive, but mostly mindfulness. Which means that, of course, I do not only think a lot about mindfulness and visualization and things like that, but that I also have to produce some result, right? It's not like, you know how corporations are. They're very nice. It's a great place to work. I always recommend it, but you have to essentially produce something in order to be able to sustain your work there. So the first thing that we had to do when we started working was to try and understand what people meant when they say meditation, because it's such a vague word, especially right now, right? You can find meditation, which are scripted meditations. You can make your living teaching meditation, even if you've never in your life meditated. You can do mantra meditation, sound meditation, food meditation, whatever you want meditation. So that's the problem. That's the problem, because sure, I'll, if you like, then I'll post it. Let me share the image again. Is that all right, Anna? This is the 8 forms of Guru Rinpoche. But this works with everything, be it Buddhist or not, right? We're just using this as because we're Buddhist, but you can use it with whichever system you want. So the main thing to understand is, what do you mean by meditation? Then once you, no problem, once you basically narrow down your definition, you have to start creating taxonomies, which are types of meditation. Okay, mantra meditation usually means you say something, right? What does it differentiate it from, for example, shouting meditation, right? Or dynamic meditation, as the Osho people call it? Well, you have to create certain parameters, and then you start looking for patterns and analyzing and so on. Most of the meditations that we have found, especially in the West, tend to be visualization and result-oriented meditation, which, of course, in Buddhism, this could or could not be, depending on the situation, a good thing. But in a corporate environment, oh yes, you know, there's no bottom line in Nirvana, but there is certainly a bottom line if you're trying to find ways to improve productivity. So yes, very much interesting. And then we have to see, okay, what do these goal-oriented meditations have in common? And they have basically 2 or 3 things in common. To create your goal in the smartest way possible. SMART being an acronym of smart, repetitive, measurable, attainable, and so on, right? And to be able to visualize it correctly. And then we stuck upon the first problem, which was, when we say visualize, what do we mean by it? No, I mean something, of course, and you, when I say, let's visualize the image, you, of course, did something. Now, is that the same thing that we did? Right? When we say visualize, in the context of this workshop and in the context of mostly the tantric practice, it is not the ability to see something, which is where the word becomes a little tricky. Because visualize, it seems like you are just sitting there and something appears, like reality fades away and something appears by itself, right? And by itself, it's like you went into a different section of the matrix and everything is highly defined and so on. This would be beautiful if this happened like this, but it's not happening like this. So essentially, when we say visualize, we mean with a certain degree of volition, of will, we create something that may be visual, but also may be tactile, may have smells associated with it, and essentially has a certain structure, which is not random, right? If I want to visualize Padmasambhava's mandala, it's going to have a certain structure, and I am going to have a certain structure myself in relation to each one of the points. So far, so good? Okay, so this is the most theory brain parts, but I will be just done in 2 minutes. So what do we mean by visualize? Well, most people think to visualize is just appear. What we will try to do is essentially just to remember. And the trick for visualization, the trick to have something that is visualized very clearly, is less seeing as passively capturing some stimulus, but rather recreating it from memory. So far? That is why, for example, the place where Tibetans meditate tend to be called Gompa, right? You could call it a lot of things, Ling, Shedra, whatever, but these are mostly either yogic places or philosophical colleagues. A Gompa, which is the place where you do Gom, which is usually translated as meditation. Gom literally means to basically make acquaintance of or make an habit of. So this is one of the keys to visualization, especially in Tibetan styles. If you just close your eyes and it appears perfectly in all the details, that's great. That's great. Because something has been transmitted from the guru's mind to yours. That's perfect. But even if it does not, you can essentially build it up. And you can do it with the Tibetan systems, you can do it with Hecate, you can do it with any kind of witchcraft that you want. So anything that you try to do, you can carry over. So this is a very simple and very effective way to improve essentially any sorcery, right? Any witchcraft, essentially. So we're going to remember. This is the first thing. And there is a couple of texts in Tibetan schools which basically deal with visualization as remembering. This is a beautiful one by Bipham Rinpoche, and there is another from Yangon Kongfu, which essentially deal with the creation of this image, right? But this is how we will do it in a traditional Tibetan setting. I will show you a picture, right? Let me show it. Let me show this time again. And I would say, okay, what I want you to do is to take the main figure. Let me just draw it here so you can see it. This is, of course, Padmasambhava, right? This is the main figure here. And you will basically split it into 3 levels. This is a traditional way, which we're not going to do, but I just want to show you the difference. And we're going to do a focus session just on the face, just on the face. And I'm going to say, keep in mind the different proportions of the face. So, how does the head fit on the face? How big are the ears? They are usually very big, right? And so on and so on. And it is that you are going to try to always see the face, this kind of outline of the face. Then on the second session, I'm going to say, okay, let's do it on the chest. Let's focus on the clasp. Let's focus on the ropes. Let's focus on so on, so on, so on, so on. This is how the text is presented, right? Then let's focus on the lower part. Let's focus on the emblems that he's holding. Let's focus on the ways that the legs are crossing. And then once you did this, you would do everything from up to down, and then from down to up. And then slowly, you would be creating the different parts of the visualization. So far, so good. But here is something which, of course, I tried this, and this was very, 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 very difficult for me. Of course, you can do it if you push forward and forward and forward, but it's still difficult. So I stumbled upon something that I think it will help you, which is, have you ever been to a Tibetan temple when they practice together? Any of you have been? Never. Well, it's mostly sung, right? Really, you basically sang the practice, and you say, okay, I am Padmasambhava, I have 2 hands, I have 2 eyes, like, of course, with a different rhythm, right? But everyone sings. Therefore, something that struck me is what? Because when I went to my Tibetan teachers, I say, okay, what do I do to improve it? And they say, well, you just do it. And I say, but okay, let's put a metric into it. How much time it takes for you to not know anything about a deity to visualize it in detail? Well, they say it probably 2 sessions. And I say, bullshit. It doesn't take 2 sessions for me. It doesn't take 2 sessions for my students, right? It takes a lot more. And they say, they must be doing something wrong. And I say, okay, what? I don't know, but it's not difficult, they say. And I say, no, there must be something that is happening here. And one thing that happened was that I found that they sing. And let us do this. I'm going to show you a second image now. But while I'm going to show it by the same time that you saw the first image. And then what I want you is to, and this is going to be very funny, I'm going to describe the image to you. And I want you to follow my description to see if you can hold it a little bit longer, right? Whenever you can't, you just type or pop up your hands. But let's see if this makes it even a little bit longer than 30 seconds. We will, with 35, we will just happy. If we can hold it even better, that will be an improvement. Everyone ready? So let me get my chronometer or timer. Okay, so 10 seconds to the image. 6, 7, 8, 9. Close your eyes and start remembering. Now, so I want you to remember this image, which is of a goddess. The goddess is very white against a backdrop that is deep red. She has 3 arms. The first pair is clasped upon her chest. Then she has 2 on the left, 2 on the right. She's draped in some clothes, and she's floating within a circle made of colored lights. So far, so good. So good. Everything is right. Well, let's stop here because we already went over the minute mark. So we improved 100% the rate of visualization that we did. How do we do it? Why, if I relate something, if I tell you something, why is it easier? This is a good question, right? Essentially, why I am talking about something and this makes it easier for you to remember it. Does anyone has any clue what it might be, or any idea, or just no? Sorry, as soon as it appears, I could. Hey, thank you. As soon as it appears, it disappeared. Share it again? Sure. Let me share it again. Give me 1 second. I was just getting ready a third image, but give me 1 second. I'll just share it again. This I should close because if not, I'm going to spoil the next picture. That should be it. Can you see it, Anna? Anna? So, it is a little bit about that. Yes, Becca. Yes, Becca. That's one of the keys. You are adding a new sense, but there's something else going on. Because I could tell you, for example, okay, let's imagine the sound of the deity. Let's imagine the smell of the deity, but you're not perceiving it. You're imagining it, right? I'm just showing you visual information. So yes, to try and work it through memory is possible, but it's not the only thing, right? So let's do one last thing, and this is going to be the one where you look at me like I'm asking you to do crazy things. I'm asking you to do crazy things. Yes, yes. But this is going to be easier. You are alone where you are? Great, great. Not so crazy then. What I want you to do is I'm going to show you another image. And I want you to basically take a good look at it and then speaking out loud. And this is a key factor. Speaking out loud to describe it. Matt, oh yes. Perfect, perfect. No, it makes perfect sense. Actually, Matt, you know, there is one method which is called the method of Loki, which is essentially not Loki like Loki, the Norse god, but Loki in the sense of location, right? Which is used to create memory palaces, which deals in this. We are as a species, much more into spatial memorization than visual memorization, which makes sense. If you were, I don't know, hunted by a saber-tooth in prehistory, it's always better to know where to run than essentially try to find which exact species is charging down upon you. It is a bronze saber-tooth, it is a golden saber-tooth, it doesn't matter, it's going to kill you, you know? So you better get running. And this is why spatial is always better than visual. That is why the mandala is a mandala, for example. The mandala is a palace, and it's not a series of notes or a series of scholars, which would also work. Bear in mind that each deity in Tibetan Buddhism, it's also sound and it's also a color and it's also a series of emblems. So why lay them down in a palace? In a palace with the crematory grounds and whatever, because this structure helps us structure our experience. And this is tied up to this last point. What I want you to do is you describe this out loud. You don't have to shout, you just have to whisper it, but you have to put it in words. The next deity, and when you run out of time on the description, you let me know. Would that be all right? Everyone clear? I just wanted you to see. I will take the image after some time, and you have to describe it while you are visualizing, right? Excellent. So let's get everyone ready for this. So let's get my timer ready for this. Right? So watch the image. 10. Now, get into visualize it and talk, describe it. Great. Let me know when I see you still talking, so. Perfect. Done 1, done 2, done 3, done 4. Perfect. Time. 1:20. So we have gone within 20 minutes, we have gone from 30 seconds to 1 minute 20, almost 3 times the improvement. So what gives? Essentially, what gives? Why is this an easier way? Because essentially, when we're doing visualization, we're constructing things, guys. We're constructing things in our mind. So the trick for visualization, it is not the senses, it is not the visuals, it is not even memory itself, but the structuring of it. How many arms does it has? How big it is? It is what is the impression? It doesn't matter if the image is exactly the same as it was shown. What matters is that the general gist of it, it's correct. Let's take a simple example just to close this. I am not talking about values. I'm not asking you to value him, but everyone here knows who the President of the United States is, right? Again, not saying good, bad, whatever, just saying. If I ask you, let's think about him, you have this kind of model. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be perfectly lifelike. But if you keep thinking about him, you can add, like, for example, his voice. He has a very distinctive voice and pattern of speech, right? Right, his hands, exactly, right? The way he moves his hands, the way. So you can build this thing which can essentially be a good representation of what he's doing, what he is. Of course, probably some details will be off, but that in itself, it's something that's a lot closer than it just try to brute force him into existence. If you say, okay, visualize him, like this, perfect, it's not going to be. The deities are the same. You basically build them detail by detail and relation by relationship. And this is always better when you do it and when you bait. The worst thing that you can do is just look at them and expect them to appear. The second best thing you can do is record yourself, for example, describe it in deity, taking a page of the Tibetan text here and there, and recording, for example, one session just the face, one session just the body, so on and so on, and listen to it while you're meditating. But the absolute best thing that you can do, in my experience, to improve visualization with Tibetan deities or with any kind of deity is to sit down and you yourself generate the discourse, generate the talk of what the deity is. The description is there. You are sitting yourself down and saying, okay, I'm visualizing Vajrapani, for example, last figure, Vajrapani Buddha Amara. He's big, he's blue, he's powerful, he has two hands crossed in a mudra. He holds a noose in one hand, he holds a Vajra in the other. And this will give you a visual image, a visual focus on the deity. And with time, this will give you a visual, a kind of even the taste of the deity in itself. Now, is this the same as just sitting there and trying to make the deity appear to you? No, of course, you're using a lot of technique to get this process going. And at some point, it becomes so familiar, like with the President of the United States, you don't need a description of myself to you. I just tell you something and it works. There is, with this is the last one of the things that we're going to do, but I'm going to ask you one last thing. When you finish this, I'm going to ask you to look up, probably some people already know it, this guy. I don't know if you have ever seen him, Ross Marquand. Have you seen him anyway? He has something that is very interesting. He does what he calls nano impressions, which are impressions of a person. He's always dressed like himself. And these are convened within 1 or 3 seconds, right? I have no chance of ever doing that myself. It's like he takes the biggest, the most distinctive thing about someone, and he can convey who that one is to you within 1 or 3 seconds. It's perfect, perfect. This is something that is very interesting because in this, he's perfecting transmission, right? If I want to transmit what a date is, and I could, within 1 or 3 seconds, just make the connection with you, that'll be perfect, right? The idea is that you progress in visualization to the point that with the same speed, when thinking about Vajrapani, when thinking about Hecate, when thinking about Saint Cyprian, or whoever you want to think about it, you could build this perfect visualization. Jason would call it a throne, right? We would call it as a Maya Sattva, a bow being in which every deity could sit itself. That's the main gist of it. But the way to do it is through familiarization. So just as a practice, look up this Ross Marquand guide and then sit yourself, choose whichever deity you want, close your eyes and describe it to yourself. You will see how easier it is to build a picture of the deity. So guys, that's about it. Questions, commentaries, anything you want to add? Sure. Let me meet you. Rob, would you come in?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for that. I have a question. Is there any difference in this technique if we're visualizing ourselves as the deity or if we're visualizing it in front, just because it's a little less visual?
No. My advice is just describe yourself. Now I am, let us say, Vajrapani. Then I am stout, I'm powerful, and I have 2 hands, and one hand holds the Vajra. My advice, if you're doing it yourself and you're alone, take the posture, take the position. You just put yourself in the Vajrapani's position. It's a very dynamic position. And this will also help transmit something of Vajrapani. For example, Vajrapani is the power of the Buddhas, or Kilaya, right? You're basically rolling this purva, so this helps you get into the state of the deity by itself. But it's the same technique.
And what about the space? You said something back there about the palace. Some practices, they don't include the description, but I always find it helpful because it's weird to visualize something nowhere. You always need the context. So just make that then.
Right. My advice is, there are just usually when the practice does not say anything, either it's floating in space, or it's in the palace, a central palace with four doors and so on and so on. My advice is find out if the practice has palace, and I always recommend everyone, and my students hate me for it, but I found that it helps tremendously. Instead of starting by the smallest meditation possible, I always tell them, go to the longest, biggest, most elaborate meditation possible, and then scale back down. Why is that? For example, let us say that you have, in the Sankhya, there is this 1-page practice of Kilaya. You generate yourself through the mantra, and that's it. And there is this, like, how long this made, like 60 pages, something like that. That the one that we did.
For sure.
Very elaborate. What there is, this is the cemetery, this is and this is here, and this is there, and this is the. This is better at the beginning, because once you memorize, where, for example, the 10 Radful Sons are, you don't have to say it, right? You just start remembering, okay, where is, for example, Mahabal? Oh, it's here. Oh, where it is Trilogia Vieja? Oh, it's here, right? You don't have to go for it because the structure is already there. But it's always better to become acquainted with the more elaborate and boring, if you like, meditation, the big one with like this, and then move on to the smaller ones.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Oh, please. And anyone else? Oh, sorry, someone was in the chat saying, oh, thank you. Inner castles, yes, very much. Inner castles practice of meditation is very similar. And actually, these ties, there is not so many texts in memory work in Tibet. There are in Florence, for example. But there is a couple of very interesting texts that basically work as a memory palace. And there is a lot of work within the Kaya Mandala, which essentially is that you become, the palace itself becomes part of your body. And each part means something else. This is another way of creating structure. Instead of creating an outward structure, you create it within your body. Any other question?
Yes.
Sure.
I have a question. When we visualize the syllables, we have to rotate the symbol, you know, because like when we see channels, the right side, when I look at the right side, I have to change, you know, rotate all the image. Like here, when I see this, it's
right,
like backward. Yeah. When I see in my head, I have to rotate it like see backwards, or I can see just like it is.
No, theoretically you have to rotate it, but I'm guessing that you already tried, and it's a little more difficult, right?
Yes.
The question to think is, why is it more difficult? For example, let's do an experiment. Let us say that I want you, do you have a garage? Or do you live in somewhere with a one-car garage?
Yeah.
Perfect. Visualize your garage. Remember your garage, right? Right now. Now visualize, without shrinking it, in the complete size, the Titanic parked in your garage. What would happen? It wouldn't fit, right? This is the first thing that was saying. Like the keel is going to cut it. Why? There are just two images. They have no volume by themselves, right? They have no weight. They're just two images in our mind. And yet, we have this series of rules about what can be done and what cannot be done and where we are, that essentially are just customs, right? It's just a custom. It's just a very firm custom, right? This is what allows you to work and to perform in society. But these are nor hard and fast rules. These are just guidelines, so to speak. So part of this work in Tantra means that you slowly are starting to pull a little bit of these rules, right? So you, for example, you turn it down, but you're still facing the same way, and you say, this doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to make sense. You make yourself as small as a mustard seed, and then as big as the galaxies. Which one are you, big or small? In a visualization, it doesn't have to make sense, but we still want it to make sense. So when you have these kind of resistances, this is a perfect way to find out the rules of the visualization. Play with it, my friends. Try to see why I am so, why is worse, because it's essentially whatever I want, right? It is whatever I want, but not quite. What we want and what we can see, it's a little bit defined by structure. So let's play a little bit with the structure. I don't know if
because when I asked, some people said you have to always see at through your perspective, and then some others said, "Oh, it doesn't matter." And I said, "What?"
Well, one thing that you will find is that every teacher has his own path, and that path is the only true path, right? It's like,
Yeah.
no, but this was sold by my master who was a Buddha, so that's the truth. Well, I think that everyone's there are truths that they're always eternal and universal, always in retrospective, right? Depending on who has said them.
Right.
But my advice is that one plays a little bit with this. When they say you have to say it doesn't matter, play with it. See, if you do it like this, does it matter? If you don't do it like this, doesn't matter. And then build a little bit your conclusion, because you're going to see a lot of these arguments. For my part, this is just my position, because I just said that there are 1,000 positions, and now they're going to be 1,001, because I'm going to say mine, which is, let us picture yourself in a dream. So you remember a dream that you had, where you, for example, were in a classroom or somewhere in the office or somewhere like that? Do you have any dream? Like, for example, you were in a classroom when you were studying. So in the dream, one feels what is oneself, and one says, okay, I'm sitting in a classroom, right? And my fellows are studying, and so on, so on. But is oneself the person in the classroom? Is oneself the classroom itself? Or is oneself every single being there? Where do they arise and where do they go from, right? Why do we identify with just one single point of view? This is a very interesting question, and this is something that you have to practice in dreams. If you like to have some inkling of an option, my advice is that when you are in a dream, you become a swarm. Try to remember and create yourself a swarm of bees. It's very interesting. Most people kinda get stuck into one bee, right? There's just one bee and the other flies away. But the idea is that the swarm is the animal. So if you can try this, it'll help the practice enormously, I think.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other question, guys? No? Perfect. Then, as always, thank you so much. We're going to do something very, very important. I'm just